When someone hurts you, the natural reaction is to respond emotionally. Your mind races, your heart feels heavy, and you want to say something, anything, that will make them realize what they've done. But here's what most people fail to understand. True power lies not in reacting, but in responding with intentionality. The greatest strength you can display in the face of pain is composure. That's where the power of silence and restraint comes in. It's not about ignoring the hurt. It's about choosing a response that leaves a lasting impact, one that makes the other person think long after they've read your message. Most people, when faced with heartbreak or betrayal, immediately react out of impulse. They send long paragraphs explaining their pain, trying to get the other person to see their side. They call repeatedly, hoping for closure. They ask questions, looking for an explanation that will make the situation make sense. But what they don't realize is that the very act of seeking a response puts the power in the other person's hands. It reinforces the idea that your emotions are dependent on their actions. And when you give someone that level of control over your emotional state, you weaken your own position. The secret to making someone regret hurting you is not in explaining your worth. It's in showing them that their absence does not define you. And the best way to communicate that is with a message that is short, composed, and emotionally detached. When you send a message that is calm and devoid of any emotional outburst, it creates an effect that is far more powerful than any confrontation ever could. A simple, well-placed text can shift the entire dynamic of a situation. The reason this works is that it removes the reaction they are expecting. When someone knows they've hurt you, they anticipate an emotional response. They expect tears, anger, maybe even desperation. But when you don't give them that satisfaction, when instead you respond with a composed, almost indifferent message, it forces them to think. The power of this approach lies in the psychological impact it creates. When someone expects drama and instead receives grace, it disrupts their expectation. It makes them question their assumptions about you. Instead of seeing you as someone who is emotionally vulnerable, they start seeing you as someone who is in control. And control in any interaction is a position of strength. People regret losing those who maintain their dignity, not those who beg to be acknowledged. Think about the moments in your life when someone has walked away from you without anger, without argument, without pleading. Didn't it make you wonder what they were thinking? Didn't it make you reflect on your own behavior? That's because silence has a way of amplifying someone's own thoughts. It forces them to sit with their own guilt, their own choices, without you providing them an outlet for justification. When you react emotionally, you give them a reason to defend their actions. But when you remain composed, they have nothing to argue against. A composed message doesn't just show strength, it shifts the energy of the situation. It changes the way the other person perceives you. When you send a message that is calm, controlled, and even kind, it forces them to consider whether they underestimated you. A message like, "I genuinely wish you well. No hard feelings. Take care," carries more weight than 1,000 words of anger. It shows that you are not broken, that you are not waiting for their validation, and most importantly, that you have the power to walk away with dignity. The reason this works so effectively is that it plays on the fundamental human tendency to desire what is not easily accessible. When you remain emotionally distant, you become intriguing. The person who hurt you starts to wonder why you're not affected. They start to reflect on their actions, not because you told them to, but because they can sense the shift in energy. This is why the most powerful response is one that leaves room for their imagination to fill in the blanks. And here's the real truth. When people realize they have lost something valuable, regret follows. But regret doesn't come from words. It comes from absence. It comes from the realization that you are no longer emotionally invested. The moment someone senses that they no longer have power over your emotions, they start to rethink their actions. They wonder if they made a mistake. They wonder if they misunderstood your worth. And in many cases, they start to wish they had handled things differently. The beauty of maintaining composure is that it allows you to reclaim your power without ever having to explain yourself. You don't need to list out everything you brought to the table. You don't need to remind them of your worth. Your actions, your calmness, your ability to walk away without bitterness, these things speak louder than any words ever could. And that is why a simple, controlled response is more powerful than any argument. When you master the art of emotional discipline, you no longer react to situations, you dictate them. You decide how people remember you. And more often than not, when you choose composure over chaos, people remember you as the one who got away. Emotions are powerful, and they drive most of our decisions without us even realizing it. When someone hurts you, it's natural to want to react immediately. Your heart races, your thoughts become consumed by the situation, and all you want is to release the feelings inside you. You might feel the urge to send an angry message, call them to demand an explanation, or even try to make them feel the pain you're experiencing. But acting on impulse rarely leads to the outcome you desire. If anything, it often makes things worse. When you react emotionally, you hand over your power to the very person who caused your pain. You let them dictate your response, and in doing so, you reinforce their sense of control over your emotion. There is a stark difference between reacting and responding. A reaction is immediate, driven by raw emotion, and often regretted later. A response, on the other hand, is intentional, well thought out, and rooted in emotional discipline. Mastering the art of emotional control means you do not allow external situations to dictate your internal state. It means you recognize the pain, but you do not let it consume you. It means you acknowledge the hurt, but you do not let it cloud your judgment. When you develop the ability to pause, reflect, and respond with clarity instead of reacting with emotion, you gain the upper hand in any situation. Think about the times in your life when you reacted out of anger or frustration. Did those moments bring you peace? Or did they create more chaos? How often have you sent a message in the heat of the moment only to regret it hours later? This is the trap of impulse. It feels good in the moment, but it often leads to consequences that we wish we could undo. The irony is that the more emotional your reaction, the less seriously it is taken. People tend to dismiss outbursts as temporary frustration, but a calm and controlled response demands attention. It lingers in their mind, forcing them to take you seriously. When you respond with wisdom instead of emotion, you shift the power dynamic entirely. The person who hurt you expects you to react. They anticipate anger, sadness, or even desperation. But when you deny them that expectation, they are left confused. They start to wonder why you are not reacting as they thought you would. They question whether they miscalculated your strength. And that is when the regret begins to settle in. When someone sees that their actions did not break you, it forces them to reevaluate their own behavior. It makes them realize that they may have underestimated you. One of the most powerful ways to display emotional mastery is through detachment. Detachment does not mean you don't care. It means you have chosen not to let someone else's actions control your emotions. It means you have risen above the need for validation from the very person who hurt you. When you reach this level of control, you communicate something far more powerful than words ever could. That you are in charge of your own happiness. That no one has the ability to shake your peace. That you are not looking for closure because you have already given it to yourself. Most people believe that closure comes from the other person. They think that if they can just get an explanation, an apology, or an acknowledgement of the hurt, they will be able to move on. But the truth is, closure is an internal process. It is something you give yourself, not something you seek from another. And the moment you realize this, you take back all of your power. You no longer need someone else to make you feel whole again, because you have already done that for yourself. Imagine for a moment that you do not react the way they expect. Imagine that instead of sending an emotional text, you respond with calmness. Imagine that instead of seeking closure, you simply move forward with grace. What do you think happens then? The absence of a reaction creates an emotional void. It forces them to fill in the blanks themselves. They start to wonder what you are thinking. They start to question if they made a mistake. They begin to feel the weight of their actions. Not because you told them to, but because your silence forced them to confront it on their own. People feel the most regret when they realize they have lost something valuable. And nothing is more valuable than a person who has mastered their emotions. The world is full of people who react, who lash out, who beg for attention. But those who can remain composed, who can detach, who can rise above the chaos, those are the ones who command true respect. And that respect often leads to regret when the other person realizes they can no longer affect you in the way they once did. Every time you resist the urge to react impulsively, you are training yourself to become emotionally stronger. Every time you choose to respond with wisdom instead of emotion, you are reinforcing your power. And with each instance, you move further away from being controlled by the actions of others and closer to becoming the kind of person who dictates their own reality. The moment you stop reacting emotionally, you force people to see you in a different light. You shift from someone who is affected by their actions to someone who is entirely unaffected. And when you reach that point, they begin to wonder what they lost. When someone hurts you, your instinct might be to make them see your pain, to make them understand what they have done. You might think that if you can just express yourself properly, if you can just find the right words, they will finally realize their mistake and regret hurting you. But that's not how human nature works. People don't regret losing someone because of words. They regret it because of actions, because of absence, because of the sudden realization that they no longer have access to something they once took for granted. And that realization only comes when you completely remove yourself from their emotional reach. One of the biggest mistakes people make when they are hurt is thinking that explaining their pain will make the other person care. But the truth is, someone who has hurt you, whether intentionally or not, is already operating from a place where your feelings are not their priority. If they valued your emotions the way you want them to, they wouldn't have caused the pain in the first place. And yet, when people feel betrayed, rejected, or abandoned, they often go back seeking validation. They send long messages detailing their hurt, hoping for an apology. They try to make the other person see things from their perspective, but in doing so, they only reinforce the imbalance of power. The moment you make someone aware that they still have control over your emotions, you give them the upper hand. They might apologize out of guilt, but guilt is not the same as regret. Guilt fades quickly, but regret lingers. Guilt makes someone say sorry in the moment, but regret keeps them up at night, wondering if they made the wrong choice. And the only way to make someone feel regret is to show them through your actions, not your words, that their presence or absence does not dictate your worth. People expect a reaction when they hurt you. They anticipate anger, sadness, pleading, or even a desire for revenge. And because they expect it, none of these reactions make them think twice. If anything, emotional outbursts confirm to them that they had an impact, that they still hold a certain power over you. But what truly unsettles someone is the unexpected, the silence, the composure, the effortless detachment. When they see that you are not trying to prove anything, not chasing closure, not demanding explanations, it forces them to question everything. Why aren't you reacting the way they thought you would? Did they miscalculate your feelings? Did they underestimate your strength? And more importantly, did they lose something valuable without even realizing it? Psychologically, human beings are wired to assign value to things that are scarce, to things that are difficult to obtain. It's the reason why people chase what they cannot have, why they regret what they can no longer reach. And that is precisely why distance is more powerful than confrontation. The longer you resist the urge to explain yourself, to seek validation, to demand acknowledgement, the more your absence will be felt. The person who hurt you will begin to experience the consequences of their actions in the space you leave behind, in the unspoken words, in the void that once held your presence. And here's the irony. The moment you stop caring about whether they regret losing you is often the exact moment they start regretting it. Because human nature is built on contrast. People don't appreciate the warmth until they feel the cold. They don't recognize the value of attention until it is no longer given. They don't realize the impact of someone's presence until they experience the depth of their absence. That is why silence is so powerful. It forces them to feel the weight of what is missing without you having to say a word. But detachment is not just about making someone else feel regret. It's about reclaiming your own power. It's about shifting your energy inward instead of outward. Because the truth is, no amount of regret from someone else can heal you. The only thing that truly heals is the realization that you never needed them to validate your worth in the first place. And once you reach that understanding, something interesting happens. The tables turn. Suddenly, the person who once dismissed your value starts to see it clearly. The person who once took you for granted starts to miss what they lost. But by then, you are no longer waiting for their regret. You are no longer seeking their validation. You have already moved forward, not because they gave you permission to, but because you chose to. And that is when real power begins, not in making someone regret hurting you, but in realizing that their regret no longer matters to you. There is something deeply unsettling about a person who refuses to be emotionally controlled. When someone hurts you, they expect a response, whether it's anger, sadness, desperation, or even a confrontation. People thrive on the idea that they have an impact, that their presence or absence in your life dictates your emotions. And for many, the biggest form of satisfaction comes from knowing that they still hold power over you, that their actions have the ability to shake you. But what happens when you give them nothing? What happens when, instead of reacting, you simply become silent? What happens when, instead of chasing, explaining, or seeking validation, you make a quiet but powerful exit? When you remove access to your energy, something shifts. Suddenly, they are left without a reference point. The person they expected to beg, to plead, to show frustration is nowhere to be found. And this creates an unsettling experience for them. They don't know what you're thinking, and that uncertainty begins to grow in their mind. Did they miscalculate your feelings? Were you stronger than they assumed? Is it possible that they were the one who lost something valuable? This is how doubt begins. And once doubt enters the mind, it is very difficult to remove. Human nature is built on the idea of contrast. People only realize the value of something once it is no longer easily available to them. They appreciate kindness when they are met with coldness. They understand loyalty when they are surrounded by betrayal. They recognize peace when they experience chaos. And in the same way, they start to feel regret when they are met with distance instead of confrontation. Your silence becomes a mirror. reflecting their own actions back at them. Instead of you reminding them of what they did, their own mind starts replaying the situation over and over again. They begin to analyze every moment, every word, every choice they made. And the more they analyze, the more they start to see the cracks in their own behavior. People expect closure to be a conversation, an explanation, a final moment of clarity. But real closure is never found in words. It is found in absence. It is found in the void that is left behind when someone who once cared simply stops. There is no greater realization for a person than the moment they understand that they no longer have access to someone who once valued them. That realization does not come through arguments, it does not come through explanations, and it certainly does not come from begging them to see your worth. It comes when they see with complete clarity that their actions led to their own irrelevance in your life. This is the part most people struggle with. The temptation to explain yourself, to seek acknowledgement, to make sure they know how much they hurt you is overwhelming. But the truth is, nothing you say will have the same impact as your absence. Words can be argued with, but silence cannot. Silence forces a person to sit with their own actions. It removes the ability for them to dismiss you as emotional, to claim that you are overreacting, to comfort themselves with the idea that you will come back once you've calmed down. Silence eliminates all of these justifications and leaves only one undeniable truth. They lost access to you. But here's the key. You must mean it. Silence is not a game. It is not a tactic to manipulate someone into caring. It only works when it comes from a place of genuine detachment. When you truly understand your own worth, when you realize that your value does not decrease just because someone failed to see it, your silence becomes an unshakable force. And that force is what causes the deepest kind of regret. Because nothing haunts a person more than the realization that they lost something good, not because it was taken from them, but because they failed to appreciate it when they had it. When you master the art of detachment, you gain something far more valuable than their regret. You gain freedom. Freedom from needing their validation. Freedom from the cycle of emotional ups and downs. Freedom from the exhausting process of proving your worth to someone who never deserved it in the first place. And once you reach that level of peace, the irony is, that's when they begin to feel the full weight of their actions. That's when they start to realize what they lost. But by then, their regret is no longer your concern. There is a powerful transformation that happens when you shift your energy inward instead of outward. When someone hurts you, the natural reaction is to focus on them, what they did, why they did it, whether they regret it, and whether they will ever realize the pain they caused. Your thoughts revolve around them, giving them space in your mind long after they have left your life. This is where most people get stuck. They believe that closure comes from the other person, from an apology, from seeing regret in their eyes, from hearing the words that confirm they made a mistake. But in reality, closure has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with you. When you keep replaying the past, you unknowingly keep yourself tied to the very thing you want to move on from. Every thought about them is energy given to them. Every moment spent analyzing the situation is another moment of your life wasted on someone who has already shown you who they are. And the longer you keep yourself in that loop, the more power you hand over to them. That is why the most powerful shift you can make is the decision to redirect all that energy back to yourself. Instead of focusing on why they did what they did, you focus on yourself. Instead of wondering if they regret losing you, you focus on becoming the kind of person who doesn't care whether they regret it or not. Healing is not about getting an apology. It is about no longer needing one. It is about reaching a place where their actions no longer have an emotional grip on you. This does not mean denying your emotions or pretending you were never hurt. It means acknowledging the pain but refusing to let it dictate your future. It means accepting that you cannot control how others treat you, but you can control how you respond. And the most powerful response is always one that centers around self-respect and self-prioritization. Most people waste months, even years, waiting for someone to see their worth. They hold on to the hope that one day the person who hurt them will wake up and realize what they lost. But here's the truth. Even if they do realize it, that realization will not heal you. It will not erase the nights you spend questioning yourself. It will not undo the emotional damage. And if you are still in a place where their validation matters, their regret will only pull you back into the same cycle. That is why the real victory is in detachment. It is in no longer needing their acknowledgement to feel whole. Imagine taking all the energy you are currently wasting on them and redirecting it into yourself. Imagine using that energy to build something, to improve yourself, to invest in your own growth. Instead of checking their social media, you are reading, learning, expanding your mind. Instead of wondering if they miss you, you are discovering new passions, setting new goals, and creating a life so fulfilling that the past becomes irrelevant. Instead of waiting for their regret, you are making them irrelevant to your happiness. And here's the irony. When you stop caring, that is when they start to notice. When you no longer need their validation, that is when they start to feel your absence. Because people are drawn to confidence, to independence, to someone who knows their worth. When you shift your energy inward, you create a gravitational pull. Your presence becomes powerful, not because you are trying to make them regret losing you, but because you are thriving without them. Detachment is not coldness. It is not bitterness. It is not about pretending you never cared. It is about recognizing that you deserve better and acting accordingly. It is about setting a standard for how you allow yourself to be treated and refusing to settle for anything less. And when you truly embrace that mindset, you won't even have to think about whether they regret hurting you, because by then you will be too focused on yourself to care. There is an undeniable power in knowing that you have the ability to shift your entire reality with a single decision. The moment you decide to stop seeking validation from the person who hurt you is the moment you reclaim your control. Most people operate under the illusion that closure, healing, and peace come from someone else. They believe that in order to truly move forward, they need the person who wronged them to acknowledge their mistakes, to apologize, to feel remorse. But in reality, true power is found in walking away without looking back, without seeking explanations, without needing anything from them. Because the truth is, the moment you seek validation from the person who broke you, you give them permission to determine your worth. You allow them to dictate how you feel about yourself. You place your sense of self-respect in their hands. And that is where most people remain stuck, trapped in an endless cycle of waiting for something that may never come. It is a form of emotional freedom to reach a place where their opinion no longer defines you, to understand that their inability to see your worth does not mean you are unworthy, to recognize that their regret or lack of it has no bearing on your value. This is where most people struggle, because they are conditioned to believe that worth is something external, that it is based on how others perceive them, how they are treated, whether they are chosen or rejected. But real confidence, real strength comes from knowing that your value exists independent of anyone's recognition of it. The mind is the most powerful tool you have. What you focus on expands. The more energy you give to thoughts of them, the more power you give them over your life. If you spend your time wondering whether they regret what they did, whether they think about you, whether they will come back, you are keeping yourself emotionally tied to a situation that no longer serves you. And as long as you do that, you are preventing yourself from stepping into the life that is waiting for you. The energy that is wasted on the past could be used to build something incredible for yourself. Every thought about them is a moment that could have been spent on you. Every time you check their social media, wonder what they're doing, or replay old memories, you are giving them real estate in your mind that they no longer deserve. Imagine for a moment that you redirected all of that energy inward. That instead of seeking validation, you focused on self-improvement. That instead of waiting for them to regret their actions, you became so focused on yourself that their regret became irrelevant. Imagine investing in your growth, mentally, emotionally, physically. Imagine leveling up in such a way that the version of you they knew no longer exists. Because here is the truth. The greatest form of revenge is not anger, not proving a point, not waiting for them to realize their mistake. The greatest form of revenge is evolution. It is becoming so untouchable, so self-sufficient, so internally fulfilled that their absence feels like nothing more than a minor inconvenience. People regret losing what they can no longer reach. They only begin to appreciate what they once had when it is no longer accessible. And that realization is far more powerful when it comes unprovoked. If you spend your energy trying to make them regret losing you, you are still attached. You are still operating from a place of lack. But when you genuinely move on, when you pour into yourself so fully that their absence no longer affects you, that is when they feel the weight of what they lost. And by that time, their regret no longer matters, because the person you have become is no longer interested in looking back.